You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. In the world of ancient Greece, the most important invention wasn't the temple, the trireme, or even philosophy. It was the polis. The Greek city-state was more than a settlement with walls and markets. It was a political community, a religious center, a military force, and a way of life. Between 800 and 500 BC, dozens of these polis, plural of polis, sprang up across the Greek mainland, the Aegean Islands, Asia Minor, Sicily, and even North Africa. Each was fiercely independent, often ruled in different ways, some by kings, others by councils, tyrants, or citizens. But they all shared a core idea: the belief that the polis was the true space where Greek identity, freedom, and belonging took form. The term polis doesn't translate cleanly into English. We might say city-state, but that's just scratching the surface. The polis wasn't just a political unit, it was a moral and social one. Aristotle would later define man as a political animal, destined to live in a polis. To the Greeks, living outside a polis, being stateless, was akin to being less than human. The polis gave structure to daily life, from religious festivals to military obligations, from marriage laws to who could speak in the assembly. While each polis was unique, certain patterns emerged. A fortified acropolis, usually at the highest point, used for defense and home to the chief temples. An agora, or marketplace, which was both an economic and civic center, and clearly defined citizen roles, with rights and duties that varied depending on the local constitution. Where did this idea come from? The polis emerged out of the ruins of the Greek Dark Age, which followed the collapse of the Mycenaean palace kingdoms around 1100 BC. For several centuries, literacy vanished, trade slowed, and political complexity diminished. But as iron replaced bronze and small communities began to regrow, new political experiments took shape. No longer beholden to distant kings or massive palatial bureaucracies, these communities began organizing around kinship, shared cults, and military cooperation. Over time, that turned into codified laws, civic assemblies, and territorial boundaries. Unlike the kingdoms of the Near East or Egypt, the Greek polis didn't worship its rulers. Kings were replaced or limited by councils, and power was often distributed, sometimes chaotically, between oligarchs, tyrants, or even the people. What made the polis so powerful wasn't its size. Most polis were small, a few thousand citizens at most, with a surrounding territory called the chora, used for farming, herding, and supplying the city. Instead, the strength of the polis lay in how it fused military, economic, religious, and cultural life into one system. When the hoplite phalanx, rows of armored infantrymen, became the dominant mode of warfare, it transformed the social order. Every citizen soldier had a stake in the survival of the polis, and political power often reflected military contribution. This wasn't true democracy yet, but it laid the groundwork. Unlike vast empires where most subjects were powerless, the average Greek citizen felt that the polis was theirs. Decisions were made in councils and assemblies. Citizens debated policy in the agora, and even justice was dispensed in large people's courts. The polis also gave rise to competition, not just in war, but in everything from athletics to architecture, drama to philosophy. While this often led to bloody wars, like those between Athens and Sparta, it also generated a rich cultural rivalry. Pan-Hellenic institutions like the Olympic Games offered brief moments of unity, but most of the time the polis were locked in trade disputes, border skirmishes, and ideological clashes. Yet this disunity had an upside. It prevented any single city from dominating the rest for long. Unlike the centralized empires of Persia or Egypt, Greek innovation came from this decentralized energy. Each polis tried to outdo the others in sculpture, science, and seafaring. What did it mean to be a citizen of a polis? It meant belonging to a civic body that governed itself, worshipped its gods, buried its own dead, and protected its land. It meant duties as much as rights: military service, participation in festivals, and the expectation to uphold the laws. Foreigners, called medics in Athens, could live in the city but had no political rights. Women had limited roles, especially in democratic Athens, though in Sparta and other cities they played more active public parts. Slavery was common in nearly all polis, forming the economic backbone in many places. But the ideological core of the polis, the citizen, remained sacred. The polis system wasn't perfect. Its obsession with autonomy often led to infighting. Its exclusionary citizenship model created deep social divisions, and its inability to unite in the face of external threats would prove disastrous more than once. But its legacy endures. The idea that a community governs itself, that political freedom is tied to civic duty, that identity is rooted in laws rather than lineage, all of this comes from the polis. By the time Alexander the Great rose to power in the 4th century BC, the age of the independent polis was fading. Macedonian kings and later Roman emperors would rule over the Greek world, turning once proud polis into administrative zones. But even then, the idea of the polis lived on, in the architecture, language, and values of those cities. Today, we see echoes of the polis in modern republics and democracies. The Greek city-state wasn't just a place, it was a mindset, that human life reaches its fullest potential when lived in a self-governing, responsible, and shared community.